Hello everyone, it is Wednesday, January 28th. By now you may have seen the video footage filmed within the Ecuadorian consulate in Minneapolis, which appears to show ICE agents attempting to gain entry into the consulate in order to access people who are legally protected within the consulate itself. A side note, why do I say alleged when we see video? I legally have to do it. I know it bothers you guys, but if you want me to be able to continue to make videos and continue to make content about the news, you have to allow us to use those words. Allegedly, appears, it seems as though. We have to use those words. I understand you don't like them, but unless you want to see us rounded up and thrown in jail, you have to come to terms with the fact we have to say these things are allegations. So first and foremost, what is a consulate? A consulate is a government office that a country runs in another nation to serve its citizens and handle official business, things like visas, passports, legal support, and other services. In international law, consulates and even more so embassy buildings are afforded very specific and special protections. Officers of the coast country, people like police or ICE, generally cannot physically enter a consulate building without prior given permission from consulate leadership. This is protected in a variety of international agreements, such as the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, which the U.S. signed on to and that nearly every country follows. The basic idea is that diplomats and consular staff need space to work that's safe so they can help their citizens without fear of being hunted or forced into another government's custody just because they stepped outside. These same protections that protect consulate spaces of other countries in the United States are what protect you as an American citizen when you travel abroad. Your ability, if there's a crisis in the country you're in politically, to go to the consulate and be given safe quarter there and be protected there is what keeps this system functional. Essentially, in the most basic sense, when you see a consulate building, you should consider the grounds and building of that facility to almost be like the grounds of another country that you're stepping into. So when an ICE agent tries to go into an Ecuadorian consulate in Minneapolis and consulate staff, as you can see in the video, stop them at the door, this isn't a routine moment in an immigration sweep. This is something that violates core diplomatic protections that keep our global ecosystem functioning. This is extremely serious because under international law, a country's law enforcement, again, cannot walk into another nation's diplomatic building and attempt to arrest, round people up, harass, or physically harm people. Those spaces are meant to be absolutely secure and safe havens for that country's people and affairs. So one thing I am seeing, according to a couple of different sources like Reuters, the Ecuadorian government has already filed a formal diplomatic protest with the United States Embassy in Quito. They view this attempt as an attempted incursion, not just ordinary enforcement. So what is an incursion? Well, basically an incursion is when someone goes into a place that they don't have any right to be, especially in a way that crosses a boundary that's supposed to be respected and protected. In plain language, it means an unauthorized intrusion. This was not an accident, this was not a casual mistake, but this was an intentional crossing of the line. It is a word that gets used a lot in military, diplomatic, and legal contexts because it signals that the boundary being crossed isn't just physical, it's a political or legal boundary. So for example, when one country's soldiers cross into another country without permission, that's called a military incursion. When law enforcement tries to enter a space that's protected by international law, like a consulate, without authorization, that's a diplomatic incursion. Calling it an incursion is very intentional. It says, you attempted to violate our protected space, and that violates our political sovereignty. It frames this action as serious, very deliberate, and potentially dangerous, not just a bureaucratic oopsie. If U.S. authorities could simply barge into foreign consulate buildings on a whim, it would erode the very rules that protect diplomats and citizens abroad. Every country relies on those rules. If American diplomats were locked out of their offices overseas or subject to foreign police entering without permission to harass them, it would jeopardize U.S. citizens abroad, and it would absolutely set off a broader diplomatic crisis. That's why this isn't a fringe or technical moment. This is a deadly serious matter in terms of international law and the norms that keep our diplomatic relations and protections functioning. In this specific Minneapolis incident, consulate officials were able to activate emergency protocols to protect Ecuadorian nationals who were inside and physically blocked ICE agents from entering. And if you have an issue with that, if you think, how can they come to our country and set up an office and tell us we can't come inside, that is the literal international and global laws that have protected our country and every other country's ability to have diplomatic relations with each other since the start of the convention that set these laws. This is not normal behavior. Acting like it is only means that you are absolutely uneducated, ignorant, and unwilling to embrace the truth and the reality that you are next.